I have with me my friend Pam. She's always wonderful to talk about her career journey and some of the things she did in terms of pivoting. And I think this would be pretty interesting to all of us to just listen to her and ask her a question and have a fun time talking to her about some of the things that we want to figure out in terms of how they go about this career cycle and build your career cycle and pivot in your career. So, Pam, why don't we start by you giving us a background of what you do and what you have done over a couple of years?
Yes, a couple of years. So kind of you, my friend. About 30 years at this point. Currently, as you know, I'm a managing director at a company called the Group. We do executive coaching. We do leadership development. It's a small company. I get to really work with two partners that I just really respect and love. And as you know, that is the culmination of a long career of different types of things I've done over the years that have really, now looking back, it's nice to reflect. Every experience I had helped me be in a position to be able to take this job, if that makes sense. So I started my career in retail early on in the 90s, shall we say, in New York City. I did about 8 years there. I went back and got my master's degree, as you know, at Georgia State in organizational behavior, and really wanted to help people understand how to be better managers and how to make better choices when it comes to their career. I worked in higher ed, being a career counselor, both at Georgia State and at Emory, and working in career offices and alumni offices for many years. And then decided to go back out into the corporate world and worked in consulting and then tech at a small company called Salesforce, some people have heard of. And then after that, worked in BlackRock, so I did a little bit of finance and all of that in talent management, leadership development, coaching, kind of some similar themes running throughout. But I've had kind of three different careers and feel like I'm headed into my fourth. So career transition is something I'm relatively familiar with.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. So let's dive a little bit deeper into some of those transitions because I think a lot of people would think, wow, how did you go about switching from education to tech,
Yes.
finance? Is there anything you did to prepare you for those type of transition?
So multiple things, and I will be completely honest with you. Some were purposeful and some were not. So I don't think I knew some of the things that I was doing to prepare. I think it's a good theme to think about. We don't always know that we're doing some of the right things when we're doing them. So, for example, I think one of the things is that in any organization you're in, getting to know the people in different parts of the organization. So, for example, we talked about I was in higher ed, and then to move into technology, you might be thinking, wow, that's a huge leap. And there were two things that got me there. One was people connections. So getting to know different people in parts of the organization, getting to know our students as they moved on, keeping in touch with students like you that I've had since the early 2000s, like keeping in touch and keeping connection with people. You just never know where people are going to end up. And when I was looking at a job at Salesforce, turns out that my first college boyfriend was working at Salesforce in talent development at the time. And that's how I got into tech. I reached out to him and was like, hey, there's a job that I'm interested in. Now, that connection would not have been enough to get me in the door. Or I shouldn't say, it would get enough to get me in the door, but not enough to get me the job. So at that point, looking back through my resume and things that I had done a lot of things that the job was looking for, so my skill set was there, even if the industry matchup wasn't there. So between a connection and kind of that skill set, off I went. So I think there's one thing of getting to know everyone. The other thing is different parts of the org. So I keep in touch. Our technology team at Emory was one of the people I talked to the most, mainly because I'm terrible with technology, but I also have a healthy respect for it. And I knew that these people would be good partners with me. They also know people that work in tech organizations. So you get the lingo, you get the language, and you can kind of bridge that gap as you're moving into a new area. So for me, it really is about leaning into opportunities, getting to know the people, and looking outside of your direct area in whatever role you're in to get to know people.
That is awesome. So networking was a big part of what got you to at least get into the door a lot of these organizations because you were constantly networking across different verticals. So therefore you were able to get it. That's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. Anything academically you did? Any additional training that you thought about and did?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of people, we forget that our areas of passion have places we can learn outside of them. So I love leadership, as you know. I love coaching. I love talking to people. So while I'm reading fictional books, I'm always reading some of kind of what's the latest and greatest. For example, I just read Adam Grant's Think Again. So keeping yourself even up to date with the latest, even popular kind of science books, things like that. And I also think that continuing to get certifications in things that you're interested in. So it's so funny how many people I now know that have been to coding boot camps. Whether they code in life or not, they've just been like, hey, I need to do something like that so that I know what the people working for me are doing, or I know the language to speak in the world of technology. People that will do kind of further, even business acumen courses. I find a lot of leaders in tech, especially, have a deep knowledge of tech, but not a lot in how to run a business. They didn't take some of the business courses. So, can I take a financial acumen course? So, I think anything like that that gives you a little bit either deeper knowledge in your own area or this kind of healthy respect and knowledge in an area that maybe you aren't so smart in or you don't have as much education in, I think is really great.
Wonderful, wonderful. So there's a continuous learning cycle.
Always.
Just right. You mentioned some. Do you have any books that you would recommend for the audience?
So there's a couple I would say, like I just said, and I'm looking at my books over here. It's called Brave New Work, and it is written by a consultant from this company, and looking at how corporations have not changed since the 1800s. Like I just read the beginning of the book, and if you aren't sucked in, don't read the rest. But I found it really fascinating. A little bit of history and a little bit of why are we still doing things the same way we did them, when Henry Ford was coming on the scene. So there's that. Adam Grant, anything by Adam Grant, but I really love Think Again. And there's also Thinking Fast and Slow that I'm only halfway through. And I think those are my top ones right now. So, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing. I might probably read some of those. I'm actually reading, which I've never read before because I probably just didn't pay attention much to him, but Tony Robinson, basically. And he wrote this book about finance, which kind of intrigued me because part of some of the things that I do with my money is invest in the stock market and buy stupid things like Bitcoin, which most people don't like. And he wrote this book about how people can get access to private equity and the whole alternative market through something called GP stakes. And I found it pretty interesting. So I think I bought this book for the first time ever. Basically, I never paid attention to him until now. But it's a deeper dive into just the knowledge of what goes on behind the scene in terms of what. So I really enjoy. So you're right. Just constantly upgrading our knowledge set is pretty important, basically. So thank you for sharing that.
Definitely.
So let's walk us back through the beginning of this whole process. So you're an undergrad. You're thinking about what came to your mind? What are you thinking about? What are you going to do? What do you want to do? What was your goal? Do you see
So,
yourself doing this back then?
no. I saw nothing, Glenn. I was the worst. Like when I went in, a lot of I think why was good at career counseling with people is because I understand what it feels like to not have a clue. Like when I was coming up to even as I headed into college and even as I was leaving college, I remember thinking, okay, it's time to get a job. Like it's time to get a job. I had no idea what that job was. And I was a business major. I had taken all the courses in finance, and I had many friends who knew they wanted to be in finance, many friends who knew they wanted to be in consulting. I knew nothing. My parents were both, my mom was a secretary, a legal secretary, and my dad was an elementary school principal. Neither had had a job in business. Glenn, I interviewed for every job that would take me. Like I went on so many interviews. And I think what I didn't recognize at the time that I would love for people kind of in that undergraduate or even graduate, kind of graduating, going into this new world, is that a couple of things. One, if you're really uncomfortable in an interview, like you find it weird and maybe you're not feeling like you can be yourself, that may be a hint that maybe this isn't the company or the culture for you. I'll give you an example. I interviewed with Procter and Gamble, and this was in 1992. They were very buttoned up. Everything was, blue power suit, white button down shirt. Everyone was very buttoned up. And I passed the first round interview, which I passed the math test, which I was shocked about. And I had this second round with this woman. And I remember thinking, I am not connecting with her. Like, we're not really speaking the same language. It's not going great. Like, I pride myself on being able to connect with people, and we could not. And I didn't get pushed on to the next round. I was really sad because I thought Procter & Gamble, that sounds so cool. They do marketing, whatever that was, because I really didn't know at 21. But I didn't get the job. And it wasn't until years later that I thought, I think that woman knew I wouldn't fit there. Like, I think she knew more than me that maybe I'm smart enough for the job, but I wasn't going to like it there. We forget when we're interviewing that we are interviewing them too. Like, we are interviewing that company. So pay attention. Do you feel comfortable with these people? Do they laugh at your jokes? Can you, whatever it is, if you're a very buttoned up person, are they very buttoned up? Like, are we matching? Again, not that you can't work at a company with different personalities and all that, of course, but there is this kind of natural selection to remembering that if you don't feel good in the interview, then maybe you don't want to work there either. So very much paying attention. I think I wish I had paid more attention when I was younger because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I think picking based on the kind of personality and the culture, if you're not exactly sure what specific job you want, is a great way to kind of pick that first role out of school.
Right, that makes a lot of sense, and I say that to a lot of people I talk to, that don't worry about what you think you want to be. Some people are good at that, right? Some people have a linear process, like, okay, this is what I want to be, this is what I'm going to do, and some people just don't. And I think that, and I've heard it over and over, we live in an era where we can actually just play with things.
Yes.
We actually can just try out different things. Like, okay, I'm going to try this job. If it doesn't work, I can try this job. I can even try starting a company myself. I can do a part-time thing. And because people, we don't really understand how much we learn from just doing those things, right? If we don't know what we want to do. So just say, okay, fine, I want to try this. I'm going to do it and see if I like it. And like you said, sometimes you just feel it's not for you. Like you're there and just like, this doesn't work for me. And you try something else. And so many people don't realize that we fail by learning, and some of these things are failures, right? We don't want to use the word failure because it's such a bad word, but we're basically trying them and it doesn't work for us, and we say, okay, I'm going to try something else, and eventually you do something that's a fit, and you're like, oh wow, I had no idea I would like this. Basically, so you're absolutely right. I thought finance was my thing, and I went into finance for a number of years. I worked for a hedge fund. Actually, I was part of the hedge fund, and I just didn't like it. I did not like it. I was like, you know what? This is just not for me. But the one thing that came out of that for me was I learned about venture capital, the whole asset class, private equity venture, and believe it, I fell in love with it. I was like, whoa, how do I do that? Back then, like you said, right, the barriers to entry was really high, basically, and it was like, whoa, okay, this is a massive hurdle. But I just kept plugging away, just to learn it. But that was when I fell in love with it. I said, oh, this is what they do, and this is a startup world. I really like this. How do I get in it? Because I felt like that was me. I grew up with my parents being business person. They wouldn't say they're entrepreneurs. They don't know what that means. They're business person. They've always been small business owners, and I've always embraced that piece of me, and I like it. So, everybody wants to go to finance, so we went, but I just did not like it. I was like, oh, wow, I'm not really having fun right here. And then because we into this alternative asset class space, I learned about venture and just said, oh, wow, this is what I would like to do. And, and just, like I said, so the things just happened. I didn't like get up one day and say, oh, like most people can say, I would be a bit. No, it was just, it's there. So I'm glad you're mentioning that, because it makes such a rich conversation for a lot of people who are thinking about their career path, because they always think it should be linear as opposed to, okay, I can try different things and see where it goes.
I love so much of what you said. I have three things I really want to hit on that I think you said are very important. The first is that world we're in right now. When I was graduating, even when you were graduating undergrad, there was that idea of a linear, you go into banking and then you go into PE and then you go into, like, there's a stage to things, and you can't just go directly into PE, or you can't go directly into this. You had to take these stages and do these things. And I think because of technology, because of the way the globalization of the world, and this younger generation has a little bit of that, why would I only do one thing? Like, I want to try it all. And they can be 5 minutes in a video on, 30 seconds in TikTok. They can make a YouTube video. Every one of my students has a side gig. They look at the corporate world as more like, I'm going to get my benefits there and I'm going to learn some things there. But everyone has a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit or wants to do a thing with a friend. And I think the world we live in, even post-pandemic, we've all realized we have to be a little bit more nimble and a little bit more willing to change. And so the world is embracing people like you and I, people I honestly think like most of us, that are relatively uncertain what the next 10 years should look like. I know what I want to do in the next 5 maybe, but I don't know what's going to happen after that. So there's that. And also the idea that I think recruiters and stuff have even embraced this, because we don't know what the jobs are going to be 5 years from now. AI, the world is exploding and changing so fast that even if you are a planner, it's hard to plan for 10 years from now because we don't know what jobs are going to be available to us. It could be completely different. So I think there's that the way the world is working is really embracing a little bit more of uncertainty and change. And the other thing that you said too is being open. You were open to looking at a new asset class. You were open to doing something different. When this door was closed, you tried a different door. Like, you're open to being like, yeah, sure, let's learn something new. Let's try something. And we get very much into this mode where we say no, or we put boundaries, or we're like, I'm not sure that's my path. To your point, we learn the most from failure. When we mess up, we learn. And we need to embrace that failure is not a bad word. Failing at something is a way to learn, and the quickest way to learn. So jump in, be messy, try it all, and who knows what comes out on the other side. So I think being open allows that moment that you had that was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Like, this is what I want to do. I had that same moment. I took a class in grad school. It was an organizational behavior class with Professor Bell, and she changed my whole world. I was like, that's what I want to do. How do I do this? And again, it took me maybe another 20 years to get to exactly where I want to be doing it, but every bit of my life had a little bit to do with that. And so the third piece is grabbing onto those nuggets and paying attention to when you're happy and when you feel good at work and when you feel bad. And if you don't feel good, leave it. Make a change. It's okay to exit. That is not a failure. That's a change. And so, and keep chasing that, like that moment when you feel really good or inspired at work, because we all deserve those moments.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that nugget, because that's the part. But before we get to that, so I was on Twitter and somebody mentioned, basically made this post and shared this tweet with us, basically where Google, and obviously people have been reading it, but he articulates in a way that makes sense, right? Google is actually laying off all these people to basically pivot into AI, using a lot of the resources that they have now, and they probably hire back some of the people for AI piece, but they're laying off all these people just so that they can actually pivot into AI a lot more. So the point you're making about people just understanding that the market can change and being willing to change with it and upgrade their skills accordingly, basically to get there. So yeah, let's talk about these nuggets, because I see these nuggets as skills, right? So these things that you're learning. How would you recommend people to understand what they're doing and take what they're doing as skill sets to include on their resume and in their interview as things they have done to highlight that they can do the job and they have the skills to do it?
So, such a great question. And let me also say before this, I don't always practice what I preach, because if we're all being really good at this, I think that some sort of, and I guess there's a couple ways. Number one, I love to recommend to all my students to keep a journal. And I don't mean that we're sitting by a lake and we're writing in our leather bound journal about our thought. No, you can have a little app on your phone that you kind of take note and notice of moments at work and during the day. You know, like I had a great week at work this week. Reflect on that for a second. What was it at work that I loved? Well, I worked on a project with 5 different teams and I helped coordinate all those teams and I just really loved that. Well, by writing that down and noticing that, I'm starting to go, okay, well, there I have a skill of coordination and collaboration. I have a project management skill, perhaps. So I'm starting to build and think in the terms of skills when I'm kind of taking these notes down. And whenever, like even quarterly, I would do a little, what did I learn this quarter, or what did I do new this quarter, so that I have this kind of running track of what I might put on my resume or update my resume because of. So again, maybe I plan 3 really big events for our tech department. Okay, well that's 3 big events I planned. I should put event planning on here. And then also, did I like it? Actually I hated it. I hate event planning. There's too many details. So that's not something I want to focus on. It's also good to know what we don't like. So reflecting, even if it's just quarterly, putting a note on your calendar that says, what I learned, what's new, what did I do? And because I think the other piece of that is some of us, as we get older, we reflect back and go, what did I learn? And there's nothing. And that's a moment to be like, oh, am I in the right role? Am I, is there a reason I didn't learn anything? Am I just doing things the same? Do I need to refresh my skills? Do I need to take a course? Do I need to do something because I'm not learning at work anymore? I'm doing a lot of teaching, a lot of directing. How can I learn outside of work? What could I do that kind of keeps my brain learning and growing? I think is really important. So kind of taking note, keeping your own notes about what you're doing at work and reflecting on those skills, and noticing when we're not learning something new and kind of questioning why. So
yeah, no, that makes actually. I'm gonna steal that. I have a notepad from Bloomberg. I don't know where I got it, but I'm gonna start taking notes. I'm gonna steal that. That's a very valid point, because a lot of times you do things and you're not aware of it. And I'm gonna try to paraphrase it. I don't think I can. So there's this guy named Gary Tan. I think, yeah, right. He's a Y Combinator person, and he said once, basically, and again, I quote, I probably won't fire if I can remember it correctly.
yeah,
And he said, when you're at work, you either learn or you earn. I think that's how it goes.
yes,
Right.
yes,
Either you learn or you earn or something. I think it's 3 up there. My memory serves me right.
yes.
And then he said, one is like good, or something then, but all of them would be better, optimal. And I thought about what he said. I think I have it written down somewhere a little bit better. I apologize, basically, because I kept it, and it's true. And basically what he's saying is that if you're not learning and you're not earning, basically at all, you might as well leave.
It might be
That's
time to go.
pretty much what
Yep.
he's saying. It's stop. It's
Yes.
just go. It doesn't make
Yes.
any
You're
sense.
done
You're
now.
there. So it's either
Yes.
or. You're either learning or you're earning. Both
Right.
is optimal, but neither is just not worth staying there at all,
And
right? So that's
and
true. So we
don't
have to
you
think
know,
about these
like,
things. So by journalizing, by writing these things down, then you can say, "Oh, wow, I'm actually not. Why am I
why am I
here?"
learning?
Right?
Yeah.
And it's
Why
something
am
we
I
have to think
here?
about some of these things. So that's a valid point.
I love, love, love that quote, and I've heard it, before. I'm sure I've heard it too. It is so smart, and yeah, I have a lot of people that I speak to reach out to me about career coaching and things like that, and I think we forget how much fun it is to learn. My colleague, Dr. Ben Michaelis, who is a clinical psychologist by trade, talks about how learning and mastery are the biggest sources of dopamine that we can have. So if we stop learning, if we stop and even mastering something, so let's say I'm a master coder, but there's still something else I could learn. Mastering that, being the best at it, will also make me feel really good. So how do I lean into that learning? How do I continue to find ways to learn, even if I'm at the top of my game? How do I continue learning from there? It really keeps us happy. It keeps us young. It keeps us, physically and mentally healthy. So why
That
not?
that is pretty informative, and we talk about that. So a lot of students, I think a lot of people always articulate that, right? So after they, so you're oh, I'm in 4 years of school, probably potentially six, and then
Yes.
they're over and they said, oh, that's it. I just want to earn money, but you have to also think that you need to continue learning, right? So just find
Yes.
ways to onboard new things, learn new things. Um, so let's talk about how do you go about pivoting? Because I think a lot of people, we can call it transitioning, basically into
Yes.
a different job. People struggle with that,
Yes.
right? They have built their career in this space. What are some things you can recommend, or some tools, or some tips you can give people to say, okay, here's what you should do or can do to pivot into a different role or transition into a different role?
Definitely. So I think, it comes down to a couple of very tactical things and then some relationship things always. So I think one of the first things I did when I was transitioning out of higher ed is, again, went back to that network. So it was a Georgia State student of mine that had been a recruiter for many, many years. He was a recruiter when he was one of my students. And I reached out to him because I was like, I know I'm going back out into a world I haven't been in a while, and I'd like to get some opinions. What's working out there? What are people looking for? And he was working in consulting at the time, and I didn't even know if I wanted to go into consulting, but I just wanted an expert opinion. So finding some people, and again, you might be like, well, I don't know any recruiters, Pam. First of all, I bet you do, because most of us know some recruiters. Second of all, I bet you know someone maybe in the industry, whether even a parent, friend of a parent. There's somebody on LinkedIn that you can reach out to and be like, hey, I'm interested. I'm really thinking about making a career pivot into consulting or tech or finance. And I'd love your opinion on what are the most important skills for me to have right now? What are the things I should talk about in my background? So, number one, do a little research with some people and some friends and family as you can. Number two is then the true technical or logistical parts of it. So, if you've decided, hey, I want to be a product engineer for Salesforce, go find that job description and look at all the things in it and see, what am I missing? Here's the skills they want me to have. Here's the skills I have right now. Here's the things I need for my dream job, right? So maybe it's a long list and you're like, oh, okay, I've got to get some certifications. Like, this is going to take me a minute. That's okay. Put a plan in place, get your certifications, and during that time, be talking to people and networking. And if I have to stay in my current job for another year, or I have to take my time to do it, take your time to do it. If you have the time to pivot, take the time and plan. If you don't, the short versions are this: what in my resume and my background is maybe equivalent or close to what they're looking for. And then your job is to make your resume have as many of the things as you can and kind of make those transferable skills for people to see. And it was interesting. I was just reading something about how this woman had gotten her next job where she wasn't qualified at all. She was missing two big things that they wanted her to have. And she literally just put it out there in her cover letter. She's like, listen, I don't have these two skills you want me to have. Here's the other things I do have and why I think I'm so awesome and why I think I would be really good for this. And she got herself an interview and she got hired. I'm not saying it always happens that way, of course. And if you could have a person that could help you and make the connection for you, that would be great. But I really do think that these days we appreciate honesty and transparency. And someone saying to me, you know what, I know I don't have these two certifications. I've already signed up to get them in the next 6 months, and this is why I want to work with you. I'm much more thrilled to have that person come on than the person that's like, yeah, I have those certifications. I've done the same job for 6 years and I just want more money, and that's why I'm coming to you. So I really think it's about personal connections, doing your homework and making yourself, putting the best foot forward, doing a good assessment of your skills and what you need, and going to get the things that you don't have.
That's pretty good tip. That's a nice list. I really like that. So we can basically make sure we do our research, assess our skills. If we need to upskill or reskill, make sure we are doing that, upskill and reskill. And there are lots of platforms out there that can support us. Basically, included my own work school. I'm just putting a plug out there.
No,
Basically,
definitely.
but yeah. So I think a lot of these things are really great, and I think there are lots of companies can support people that are doing that. So I really like that. So we see like you mentioned earlier when we started this, lots of younger people, they're on TikTok, they're in, creating YouTube pages, all these wonderful things. how would you articulate or converse with other people how to use these things that they're doing
Yeah.
and include on your resume as a skill set that they're on board? Because I see so many students compartmentalize that issue.
Oh my
They're
gosh.
doing these things, and even some of them are actually doing it for pay, for as a business, as a side hustle. But yet,
Yes.
when you look at their resume, it's not there.
It's not.
How would you
Yes.
like
Same.
articulate to them
Yes.
that these things that you're doing can go on your resume, and how would you tell them to put it there? Like, what would it look like?
Yes, I love that. And it's funny, I haven't really thought about the how to put it on the resume part. So there's a couple of things. One, kudos to you for bringing this up. I think sometimes, okay, so some things to remember. When you're applying for a job, the people that are going to hire you are probably more around my age. So maybe they're in their 50s or they're in their 40s. And so where are they? And where do I want them to see my work? So, whereas someone like me is not going on YouTube as much as, or TikTok as much as, my children that are 25 and things like that are, I know those things exist. So I think it's about LinkedIn is the place for people my age and the place for recruiters these days. Like, I think number one, lean into LinkedIn. And number two, think of LinkedIn as your personal marketing platform. So anytime you're putting a video out there that you think is worthy of career people seeing it, you want that. And again, this could be because you were at, out with friends, but you made a really cool creative video. It does not have to be about work to be, to your point, to show your prowess with technology or your creative side or whatever it might be. So as long as it's something you want employers to see, I would link it on your page on LinkedIn. I would have a section for it. And I would also post on LinkedIn. Like, be like, hey, I just filmed this really cool thing for Instagram. I really loved it. Here's my 30-second take. Or here's my TikTok video for freshmen coming into school. I was welcoming them to the University of Washington. And, this is the video I made. Put it out there and also put it in posts so that people that can start seeing it. Tag people from your school in it. If you are friends with a professor on LinkedIn or you're connected to a professor like me on LinkedIn, tag me in it so that my network then sees it. And my network is these older folks that might be hiring you. So don't just think about being to your friends. Think about who you are trying to market yourself to and where are they. And the resume is an interesting one. And I think my advice, and I will say this, and I will be open to being corrected by career people that like really work with students 100% right now. I think it would be cool to have the live links on your resume because we're sending our resume electronically, right? Like most people are not. It's going to be attached to something. So if I open it, if I could still click on those links, I would do that as a recruiter. I don't know, but I would say why not? Now, again, career people might be like, that could get messy, but I think it would be pretty cool. And I think as long as your LinkedIn page is up to date, people are going to go to your LinkedIn page. Like every recruiter is going to your LinkedIn page after they open your resume. So make sure your LinkedIn page has got everything on it.
Right, and it's on your what? That's not a bad idea because if you think about it, your LinkedIn is on there and it's already hyperlinked, right?
Yeah,
Or
so
at least it should be hyperlinked.
Yes, it should be hyperlinked on your
Right.
resume.
So having a few more hyperlink wouldn't be so bad. So while you were saying it, I was thinking about that, right? Basically, I could see where because most time you're putting your resumes out there and you try to use the STAR method or the PAR method, right? So like,
Yes.
okay, so let's say it's not one of those videos you just capture in the moment. If you're like running one of those side hustle, and you create
Yes.
a Instagram page. Obviously, you did it because you were trying to market to somebody to sell your product. So, what
Yep.
if you could just articulate that on your resume? So, for example, you said the problem was this, or the situation was this, and I created this because I'm not making enough
Yes.
sales. So, I created this marketing video, and it resulted in 100% users, or something like that, or more followers, or
Yes.
customers,
Love it.
right? And
Yes.
then you could just hyperlink one of those to the Instagram post. That's
Uh-huh.
a good idea. No, I like that because now that you're saying it, I was thinking about it myself. So I could use the same method on my resume, but then I could just I could just hyperlink the Instagram page right there, so somebody can actually
There.
click on it and see the whole thing. I don't see why not. I don't
I think it would
see.
be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Quite frankly, if I was a career person hiring, I would actually be pretty impressed with that.
Right. I would too. I'd be like, damn, look at that. They already
Right,
know how to
right,
do
because
these
you're
things.
already hyperlinking our LinkedIn page. So what would be the drawback for that's something I'm
Yeah.
actually going to use in my next
Okay.
career session because I've been doing some career session with students. So that's something I'm going to use where because I keep asking them why don't you include it on your LinkedIn page, and I thought about why not on the resume, but I've never like thought about it how to do it. And when you mentioned it, I said, oh, yeah, they can hyperlink it in a situation where they're doing their own thing and they just said, I have a part time company or I
Right.
do
This
this
is,
as
it
a
could
part
just
time
be,
job.
yeah,
Right, right,
Pam's business
exactly.
owner
Yeah, this is
and
my
all the
business or
things.
this is my little part time business or my big business and this is what we do. And they could articulate that as something that they were not making enough sales. That would be a really good thing, quite frankly. Yeah,
I
I
love it. And
probably should do that on my resume too. Come to think
I
of
know,
it.
I know, right? I know,
Right,
agree.
right, right.
You know, and so see, and this is the thing. So this conversation right here, this is why you talk to people, right? Like this is because you took what I said and went a step further, and together we came up with a pretty cool idea.
Right.
So I mean, that's like, and the other thing I wanted to say, you made me think of this, what you were saying. So I didn't realize, which is silly as now an entrepreneur. So the group does not have a LinkedIn webpage yet, but all these kids that have like side hustles where they're doing different things, they could make a LinkedIn page for their business that could be linked to their, to their personal site. And I didn't realize, I just figured this out the other day. Everyone out there probably already knows it. Forgive me if I'm way behind the times. But I put a little thing on now whenever my whenever I put something or I post underneath it says like visit my website. So these kids that have side hustles, if you've got a web page or if you just even if your Instagram is kind of like your business, you could have a link to that off of your LinkedIn page too if that's where you really want people to see your creative side and blah blah blah. Now of course, be careful young people out there putting things that you don't want employers to see on your social media.
Right,
So
that's the next. So I always recommend that they have a business platform and a personal
yes.
platform, basically. Like
Yes,
you should,
absolutely.
if you're said, like student asked me and I said, well, create a LinkedIn page for your business,
Yes.
and if you can put it on. Basically, I do my personal. Like I have my personal, my business, and there are some things that from my business I put on my personal as well because it just makes sense to put it there.
Yes.
Basically, but when I do share it, I only share the business one, not the personal one. So they can
Love
do
it.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
they can look it
Exactly.
up and see if they want. If somebody can look, but hey, that's
That's on them.
right.
Yeah.
That's on them. Basically,
Yeah.
but it's, again, I always say to the student, make sure you scrape your social media once you start applying for a job, right? Just start, "Ooh, this doesn't make sense. I won't keep this inside there and just keep taking it down, right? So all these things happen. But no, but those are really valid points. Basically, just to demonstrate a couple of skill sets right there, right? It
Yeah.
demonstrates how you're solving problem, but also demonstrate your marketing ability and your technical abilities. So a lot of things you're doing just in that one video clip alone,
Yeah.
basically is just demonstrating those things. We have about 2 more minutes left. I just basically so just wrap it up with just say telling people like what would you tell your younger self
Mhm.
basically just what would you say about this whole career thing?
Yeah, so it's so funny, and Glenn, it's actually the last time we talked and did this years ago. Another Georgia State student reached out to me afterwards and said, I love what you said on that talk. You said three things, and he told me the three things I said, and I was like, I said that? That sounds pretty good. Like, yay, wow, something smart came out of my mouth, and I wasn't planning on it. And it's what I've continued to tell my students, and I wish and I'm not even sure I could have heard it, but I wish someone had told me. I wish I knew this. So the first one is to be open. Do not be narrow in your career. We keep telling people they have to figure out what they want to do with their lives. Don't. Open it up. Think, gosh, so many different things could make me happy. Keep it broad. I knew that I wanted to be teaching and learning in every job that I had. And keeping just those two nuggets means I could do a whole host of things and meet a ton of people and learn a lot. So be open. Don't be so narrow in your thinking about what you want to do career wise, especially. Be honest. It's kind of like showing up on a first date and pretending you're someone that you're not. We dress a little better. Maybe we talk a little, more eloquently. Maybe we don't share everything on a first date. So I'm not saying share everything in your first interview with your employer, but really be honest about who you are. Be honest with yourself about what you really want in life. Don't be sucked in by what other people want. Some people want to be rich and famous. We don't all have to be rich and famous. So be honest with yourself and with your employer. Be who you are. If you don't fit at a certain place, then leave that place. That's okay. We don't all have to be best friends. We can accept that there are places that we really gel and we have a good time and there aren't. So be honest about who you are and let people just really get to know you. And the last one is be you. Like there is, and I forget, I wish I had the stat, but it's 1 in a gajillion, million, quadrillion, humongous number that your DNA comes out like your DNA. That is amazing. No one else is like you. It's what a company cannot replicate. No matter what AI does, I cannot replicate you as a human. So be you. Be who you are. Lean into who you are. Share who you are. And I think you'll be really surprised at the career wins that come if you kind of lean into a few of those.
Thank you so much, Pam. As I said to you guys, Pam is a great friend. She has been a great friend and a mentor to me. So I'm really excited about having her here. You've heard her background and the story. So thank you so much again for coming on the show. And I really look forward to seeing you in person at some point.
Me too, Glenn. I would love to give you a big hug. I think it's been like 20 years that we've known each other. And I just am so thankful for you having been in my class and kept in touch. I love it. Thanks so much for letting me talk to people. If I ever can be of any help to you or anyone in your network, I'm here.
Thank you.